Hello lovelies, it's Shani Haynes from Australia. I'm going to show you today how I made this, well, what I call a double slider card, because it has two little things popping up for a surprise happy birthday card. I used basic standard base for the cards. Being Australia, our sizes are different, so you may have to alter your measurements slightly, but it's pretty well straightforward. So first of all, mark your card at 1 inch and 3 inches along the top with a pencil, and then after scoring it, because I found it easier to score before it was cut, cut 2 slits down the front of your card, and my cutter is in centimetres, so I went from 2 centimetres down to 13 centimetres. If your cutter is in inches, roughly about start at 1 inch at the top and go right down to 1 inch at the bottom. There's no right or wrong with this. Excuse me. So now you should have 2 slits at the front of your base card. I use normal Whisper White for the base front. Now you have a little piece 3.5 inch by 3/4 of an inch, and the second piece is 5.5 by 1.5, but that's actually not correct. I'm sorry. It's actually just the width of your. Oh, sorry. No, that's right. 5.5 by 1.5. And then just slide in that little slip of a piece of paper at the front, and that's going to become the mechanics, the movement part of your card. And so you just get out some dimensionals, and I placed, here's a card I prepared earlier, I just placed one on either side, pretty close together to the slit, just to stop too much wiggle and movement. And the pulley piece goes in the back, and I just adhered that with some glue, stuck it as straight as I could. And you can see there's still a bit of wiggle and movement. So I added another dimensional on either side at the top, just to help stabilise the pulley mechanism. Now at this stage you can actually punch before you glue that in, you can actually punch corner around the top of your pulley if you want to, but it can be done later. The leaves at the front I stamped with my uninked Spectrum pad that I inked up in a sort of ombre look with all sort of the greens, and I've written them down there for you to see. And the stamp I used was Tropical Chic, and just an example here to see what the ombre effect looks like. I don't know how clear that is. Just see the different colours. Now I've pre-stamped and cut all my pieces, or the elements I'm going to use for this card, so they're ready to go. There's the thinlits that I used to cut out the tropical leaves. So Hoppy Together, the celebration freebie. I think it's my favourite. And I coloured in my frogs with the Old Olive collection, Light and Dark, Daffodil Delight Light, Light Smoky Slate, and the rich raspberry were used on the cake stand and the icing for the cake from this piece of cake stamp set. And then I punched them out with the matching punch. I used Perennial Birthday stamp set for my 2 greetings, and I stamped them in basic grey. Then I cut them out with rectangle stitched framelits that fitted perfectly for those 2 sayings. Now once everything's cut, it's time to start assembling. This is the 1.5 inch circle punch that could have been punched earlier before I actually assembled the card. I forgot to show you that. And it's pretty easy to do it afterwards, but it is better to do it first. And I did it on the front base card as well as the second card, which will be adhered to the back of the first card, so it becomes a full card and can open and stand up on its own. You don't need to do the second card, but I think it's nicer. So once you've punched that out, stamp on. Now this is the 5.5 by 2.5, which is not correct. I'm sorry. It's actually 4 2/8, which is the width of Australian standard greeting card that we make. So whatever the width of your card is, that's how wide it is. And 2.5, it can be 2.5 inches high or 3 inches high. It's up to you how high you want to make it. When I stamped the leaves, I ensured that a leaf was stamped in each top corner, because making the most of your paper. And then I just quickly fussy cut it around roughly the tops of the leaves and a little bit on the sides. You do need to leave a little bit on the sides so you can actually add some foam adhesive strips. So they get added just on the sides and the bottom. Now everyone's card's going to look different because depending on where you stamp things, so you might have to play around with this bit and see what suits you and your card. I also added, for a little bit more strength to this part, I added a tiny bit in the middle there, as you can see. And you have to be careful that when you're assembling your two little characters on the stickers, that that doesn't inhibit them from sliding right down to the base. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And the foam adhesive strips are actually thicker than the dimensionals, so that's a win for us because we actually want those leaves at the bottom to be higher than what we're going to stick on now, or else it won't slip under the leaves. So it's important to use the foam adhesive strips. If you don't have them, you could always use the dimensionals and just do two layers, one on top of the other, to make it a higher platform. So here you can see I've used the base of the cake and I've cut it off, and I've adhered the cake to the base and that to the frog. Just make sure there's no glue on the back. A quick way to get rid of that is a little bit of talc powder, and that way it won't stick or cause problems with your card later. So you can see I'm measuring up to make sure it fits. I'm just going to snip off a little bit of extra paper there because the frog isn't covering it and I don't want it to be seen. And the little frog's leg on the outside edge of the card, you've got to be careful it doesn't touch or knock into that little bit of foam adhesive at the very bottom of the card under the leaves, because it will inhibit or bend the frog's leg. So just be aware of that as well. I'm placing another leaf and the greeting on the other side to balance out the double slider. Don't need a lot of glue, and be careful not to glue any more than what you need to. It holds pretty strong, this glue. And just test to see if it works and see what's sliding nicely. Remembering you've got that divider in the middle holding things up underneath the leaf. So now you can see I've still got a bit of cake showing and a little bit of greeting showing, and I want to completely hide that so it's a surprise when the recipient pulls the card up. And so just placing the leaves where they fit. I think I did about 4 or 5 spare leaves to stick over the top. You do as many as you like. I mounted a few for interest on dimensionals, as you can see, and it just gives that lovely lush tropical look. having so many leaves. These next leaves I glued them flat straight on, but careful not to go or leave glue underneath them. Excuse me, that's exposed. Next comes the frog's friend, another frog, who's going to hold the message up. He's mounted on a dimensional. Now, I think the original card I actually didn't use dimensionals for this little greeting, but this time I needed to because the surface was a little uneven. Excuse me, and it works well. So just testing to see how it's still sliding with no problem. And the top two corners, as I mentioned earlier, it's probably wise to punch the corners around them before you insert the whole mechanism. But like me, I always think of things after I've done them. It's not too hard to do this at this stage though. I love this trio punch because it's all there, it's all quick. So now we've got our hole. And I'm just using the new Coastal Cabana and Granny Apple Green reversible ribbon, which is so pretty. And I would normally just use an old olive ribbon, which is one of my favourite colours, or Pear Pizzazz ribbon, but because they were all different ombre colours of the leaves, I thought this was a little bit more tropical, a bit prettier. I just quickly showed you then that the first card I stamped the pulley with greetings as well, but I haven't done it with this one. Next is you can close your card now using double-sided tape down two sides of the card, the outside edges, and once you've pulled off the tape and taken away the dimensional stickers as well, make sure everything's lined up nicely and carefully close it. So that's basically your card finished. You can leave it just like that and have your greeting on the back, or you can do another base card. This is Whisper White Thick because I want it to be strong to support the front of the card because it is quite bulky. I've pre-stamped it inside and I'm just going to add my greeting with basic grey ink. It's my new black at the moment. I go through phases. And a frog, of course. And then just glue them together. So there you have it, lovelies. A lovely double slider birthday card. You can add some candles at the top of the cake. I'm still debating whether to do that because it will be seen unless I add another leaf. And it's fine without it, but it could be extra cute with it. And you can see that's catching a little bit. I actually added some more adhesive foam down the side of that leaf to support that. And that's everything. Thank you for watching.